and we on our team. So I guess I should introduce myself since I'm talking and some of you I've not met. So I'm Benji Carrier at USBE and support. I'm a member of the Youth in Care team, which is officially, as of a few weeks ago, our new name. We're no longer Youth in Custody, but Youth in Care. And so we are down an executive secretary. We have a new person starting on Monday. So for those of you used to Kelsey, she moved on to the Department of Defense. And so that's why you got a separate email or a separate calendar invite from me because her link wouldn't have worked. And so we welcome you to our meeting. For those of you that don't know, because you're new, we have these 2 times a year. As per statute, we have to have a coordinating council. It does not define how often we meet, but it says that one needs to exist. And so we've decided to do that twice a year, one in the fall and one in the spring. And so this is our fall meeting. Because we have so many people in this meeting and we've got some new people, I would love for us to take a little bit of time to just go through and introduce ourselves. And I know virtually it can always be a little challenging in these big groups. And so if you could, what would make this so much easier is if you could go into your own name if it does not show your actual name. So some people, it has like abbreviations, and then no one, if we don't know who you are, then we don't know what that means. So you'll see that mine says Benji Carrier, USBE, YIC. And so if you could go in and do that, and if you're not sure how to do that, if you hover if you click on participants and you hover over your name, 3 dots will show up and you can click on that and rename yourself. And so that makes it significantly easier to identify people. Like Carrie Fit, thank you for changing that. It did say C Fit, and I didn't know who that was. So now I know it's Carrie. So now that it looks like everybody's done that I can see, thank you again so much. I'm just going to go through and call on names because anytime I've done that popcorn one, it always ends up being about 3 or 4 people in. Then people are like, I don't remember who's already been popcorned. And inevitably somebody forgets that they're supposed to send it off to someone else. And so I'm gonna just go ahead and call on your name. If you could introduce yourself and letting us know where you work, uh, and then let's see. I would also like to know, and I think the good of the group would like to know um, what your favorite flavor or how you eat your popcorn. I think that's what we all want to know as a way to get to know you. So I'll start off. So Benji Carrier, member of the YC team. And I am a light butter with Sour Patch Kids sprinkled on. That is the correct way to eat popcorn, in my opinion. So I'm going to go through the list. Amanda.
Thank you, Benji. Amanda Charlesworth. I'm the program specialist on USBE's YIC team coordinating Check and Connect throughout the state. And in my household, the correct way to eat popcorn is putting caramel on it. We do caramel corn at my house, and it has to be homemade, can't be store-bought.
All right, I'll accept that. Thank you. Dave.
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. David Solomey, education specialist with the Youth and Care team. I prefer kettle corn, but not just any kind of kettle corn. It's got to be the big kernels, not the little sissy ones. And so, big kernel kettle corn, spot on.
I'm sorry, Dave, that was incorrect. You have lost co-host rights. So, Julia. Hey, we can see you now. That was like actually really kind of freaky.
It's me.
Yeah, I
Okay.
said your name and all of a sudden you showed up. So
Yes, great. My troubleshooting abilities are awesome on my computer. I didn't even have to call IT and I was able to make it work. Anyway, I wish you could have seen my face earlier when Benji said what he said. Gross. But I really love popcorn, usually any kind of popcorn. So I will say my favorite is just at the movie theater, buttered popcorn corn with extra butter. That's probably my very favorite, but only at the movie theater and certain movie theaters. There are some movie theaters, meh, but most movie theaters, extra butter. Julia, oh, I am a YIC education specialist. Did I forget that part?
You did.
And an IT troubleshooting genius.
And we're happy to have you on the team. Annie.
Everyone, I'm Annie Valdez. I'm the Court Improvement Program Director. So I work for the Utah State Courts. My position is in the administrative office on the juvenile court team. So I oversee a federal grant that's administered to our court that's aimed at making improvements in child welfare. And I would say, kind of out of nostalgia, Cracker Jacks would be the my preference for popcorn. So,
I never actually ate them. I just took the toy and threw the box away. So I didn't know that it actually tasted good. So
oh, they're a worthy snack.
that's
So,
good. We may have to dig back into that. Thank you. Ashley.
Hi, y'all. My name is Ashley Dunham, and I'm with the Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Substance Use and Mental Health. I am Leah Colburn today. She was double booked and asked me to cover for her. And I do not like popcorn. I never really have liked popcorn. I prefer corn on the cob because I'm from the Midwest. So,
Right. Well, I don't know you, so I was going to say something snarky, but I will keep that to myself because this is the first time I'm meeting you. But if I get to know you better, I'm going to remember this day and say some things to you. So, but welcome, Ashley, and thank you for subbing in for Leah. I appreciate it. Carrie.
Hi, I'm Carrie. I'm with DSPD. I'm the state match specialist, which I help DCFS kids and JJYS kids get into DSPD services when they're in crisis. And my favorite kind of popcorn, I think some people call it zebra popcorn, where it has like white chocolate and milk chocolate drizzled on the top. So I really like that.
Excellent choice. Yes. All right. Dr. Foster.
Hey, you guys look like a good group. Hey, thanks for Benji. I'm Chuck Foster. I serve as the American Indian Education Specialist at the Utah State Board of Education. Title VII programs. It's American Indian programs. Popcorn wise, I just like it plain. No salt, no butter, just straight. That's hard to find sometimes. So you go to the movie theater, they have it mixed already with salt sometimes, and sometimes I salt and my body don't really agree with each other. So and butter's even worse. So you know, plain guy, I guess. So that's who I am.
Thanks,
That's what
Dr.
I like.
Foster. So we were the YC team and Chuck were able to go down to Blanding in July and participate in a Hogan blessing for a new Hogan down there. And I had never participated in anything like that, and I found out a lot on how important corn is to the Navajo, and that was a big part of the blessing of that building. So to hear you say that you like it uh straight like kind of makes sense that it's pure. It
Yeah,
should just be how
yeah,
how it is. So thank
yeah.
you. I
Hmm.
appreciate that. Dustin.
Justin Seeley with Juvenile Justice and Youth Services. I like my popcorn with lots of this on it, jalapeno and poblano.
Do you just carry that with you just in
At all
case?
times, even when I go to the movie theater, this goes with me. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
I am committed.
That's awesome. That's great. Thanks, Justin. How about Dustin Penman?
Sorry, I wasn't quick enough to the mic. Is my mic working?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Okay, because I've got a new desk docking system and I couldn't figure out if I was using the right audio. But my name is Dustin Penman. I'm with the state of Utah Department of Health and Human Services within the Office of Licensing. I specifically manage the congregate care or youth residential facilities. So that's me in my role. And popcorn, I'm not too picky. I like popcorn that's salty, buttered, caramel, chocolate on it, whatever. I'll take it.
Thanks, Dustin. Griselda.
Good afternoon. I'm Griselda Rogers, the Education Director for the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe here in White Mesa. And I just like popcorn with butter, caramel, kettle. So nice to be here.
Welcome. We're glad you're here. Nacho.
Okay, so I'm Ignacio Garcia, go by Nacho, Youth and Care Program Specialist, Nebo School District. You gotta have spicy popcorn, like super ridiculously spicy. It's my new thing. Like I've always done, like Cholula, big up on that, or Valentina. But here's the one that tops it all. Okay, so you gotta pop it yourself. You take like the little popping oil, put it in there. And you take about a tablespoon of salsa macha, which is like a chili or Mexican chili oil. It's basically straight chilies and oil, literally that. Toss a spoon in that and then pop your popcorn. Awesome. 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 Super spicy, delicious. Love it. Yep.
All right. Next time I come to Nebo, I want to try it. Okay. Thanks, Nacho. Laura Lee.
I'm Laura Lee Gillespie. I am with the Special Education Department here at the Utah State Board of Education. And your question was, how do you eat popcorn? And my answer is with my mouth.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Yeah. No. Okay. You're right. You're right. Congratulations. Thanks, Laura Lee. Melanie.
I'm Melanie Bliss. I'm with Provo School District, with Slate Mountain School and mostly anchored at Slate Canyon, the detention center, youth center. And I'm on Julia and Griselda's team. It's hard to find bad popcorn, except for maybe with jalapenos on it. Sorry, Justin. I just have a hard time with the hot, spicy stuff, but at the risk of incurring Benji's snark, I like all popcorn pretty much. Cheese popcorn, caramel popcorn, butter popcorn, maybe popcorn. It's popcorn. How bad could it be, right?
Thanks, Melanie. Superintendent Squire.
Yeah, this is Superintendent Squire down in South San Pete School District in Manti, Utah. And we have YC here, a youth in care, not custody, right? Gonna take me a minute. It's ingrained into me. And I like my popcorn at the movie theater, a mega deal with a big bucket, extra butter, and you have to have Barq's root beer to go with it.
Okay. All right. Throwing in a pairing of root beer. Nice. All right. Melissa, sorry, I skipped over you.
My name's Melissa Timon, and I am with the Utah Parent Center, contracted with Youth and Care. And I like popcorn's probably my favorite food. Like I have popcorn all the time, and I very often make myself sick. So I love popcorn so much, but not microwave popcorn, actually. I love all the homemade, but I've been known to eat plenty of microwave popcorn, but homemade popcorn, caramel, butter, cheese, kettle, awesome. Good question.
Thanks, Melissa. And Robert. Happy face, Robert.
I'm Robert. I am also Provo YIC, anchored at the State Mental Hospital, working with that population. And I love plenty of butter on the popcorn. But lately, my wife has got me into the Skinny Pop white cheddar, which is also very, very good. And I don't even know that I'm not getting the amount of butter that I used to. So that's even better, right?
Sweet. Thank you, everyone. I know that takes a little bit of time, but when you only meet twice a year, I think it's important that we know who we're meeting with, and now I know little fun things about each of you. So thank you. Okay, so to continue on with our agenda, we have a higher education spotlight that we wanted to share out, and Dave Solomon is going to take that.
Yep, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. I think that did that work? All right, cool. So in collaboration with the National Technical Assistance Center and it's a long title, the Education of Neglected and Delinquent Children and Youth. It was really cool to be able to work on this piece with them. What they do is essentially they assist all Title I programs across the country, and they reached out and they wanted to learn more about the YES program. And so I will share. Let me maximize this so I can get in here. I will share the link, and I encourage everyone to take a minute and when you have time to go and look at the article, we're the first piece on the article, and this was shared out across the country. And this highlighted the YES program and Decker Lake and the Utah Tech University partnership. Like Benji was mentioning, it was a higher education spotlight. It spoke about Jason Roosevelt and really emphasized the great collaboration and strong relationships that they have in Granite to be able to accomplish these things. The one thing that I'm really proud of is, one of the programs that I help oversee is the Education Transition Career Advocate Program. And it did quote Tatiana Sanchez. We call her Toddy. She goes by Toddy. And I did want to take a second to read this quote. It says, "It all pays off when you see the students earn the general education certificate or their associate's degree. They finally start to realize they can do something more and become something better. A student recently said to me, 'I never knew this was that big of a deal until I saw my family crying and realized that they were happy tears and not the sad or disappointed tears I had been giving them all these years.'" And I just think that's a super powerful quote from Toddy and experience that she has. Not all the times we're able to be on, boots in the ground and experience these things, but to hear about this and to see the great work that they're doing and the fruits of their labors coming through on a national level and being recognized is pretty neat. And so I encourage everyone to go check out the article, and great work to the YES program and Jason and his collaboration with all those partners down there, all the stakeholders.
Thanks, Dave. And okay, so next on our agenda is behavioral incident reporting. And this has come up in a few different settings, and for some reason it seems to really be taking some traction in some different groups. So I invited Melanie and Robert to be here because this is where it started, at least for me. So to give a little bit of context for this group, and then I'd like to have some conversation, and I have a proposal from our Director of Data and Statistics at USBE that I'd really like some conversation on, and I know it can be a little bit challenging with a big group. And so if you could use the hand raise so that we can we can kind of facilitate that a little bit better. So a little bit of context. Currently, for at USBE, there is a requirement in a system called UTREX, which is a data system that's used at the state, where all kinds of different data gets collected on student performance, and anything from like attendance to test scores and graduation cohorts and whether kids drop out or graduate, or so all of the different kind of data that we collect is there. One of the requirements that schools have is to report behavioral incidences. And so in the UTREX specifications manual, it has the specific behaviors that need to be reported according to the law. And in that, it does not exclude, currently, it does not exclude JJYS facilities or the state hospital. So Melanie works at Slate Canyon, a long-term secure care facility in Provo, and Robert works at the state hospital in Provo. And and so as part of our jobs at USBE is that we go around and we monitor the school districts that we provide funding to, and we have a monitoring tool that we use for that. And one of the questions is, are you reporting behavioral data? And one of the reasons that we ask that specifically is because in these facilities, as far as physical management of disruption is handled by JJYS staff or other staff in the state hospital. So our teachers do not ever handle physical management, whereas in other public schools, they often will do that. And so because of that, a lot of times things don't get reported into their student information system, which is what then syncs to the UTREX data like gateway. And so it's something that we bring up often as part of our monitoring tool. Are you reporting behavioral incidences that happen during the school time in schools? And Melanie and Robert, when we asked them that, they questioned that and said, well, now, wait a minute. While we are in a state-run facility where kids are getting treatment and we are working on some very intense behaviors, is that appropriate for us to be reporting when they have an incident where this is part of their treatment? Is that a right thing to do? And so that it was a good question and caused my team to pause and to instead of just ending the conversation and saying, yep, that's what we're doing, we wanted to be careful about that and make sure that we have a conversation on if this is appropriate or not appropriate. And so we have met with several people. Provo School District has met with their legal team about this. I've met with our director of data and statistics, Aaron Bruff. Julie has met with our director of student privacy, Katie Chalice. We've met with our assistant attorney general, Michelle Buse. And really Michelle's response was, this is why you have a coordinating council. Like, that's why in statute you have that. Like, bring this to them and let's see what a recommendation comes from them. So we have all of you different partners in different capacities and settings. Before we move on with more of the conversation, I'd love for Melanie and Robert to be able to, because I kind of spoke for them a little bit, and so I want to make sure that they have an opportunity to kind of present what some of their concerns are about the idea of reporting behavioral incidents so that we have a clear picture from people who are in the field. So Melanie first and then Robert.
Well, a few things, I guess. When the kids are, it's not that we don't do any reporting. We have a management system. We've kind of built our own daily reporting system that we report to the units as far as daily scores for the students, and we put comments in so that we're a part of the system that of information that goes to the YPA for hearings and things like that, right? So
Will
any
you define
incidents,
YPA? I think
the Youth
everyone
Parole
knows.
Authority.
Thank
So when
you.
the kids go before the Youth Parole Authority for their court to kind of gauge how well they've been doing in their progress, because in a juvenile justice system, they have a guideline that they're going to get their sentence essentially, but they can take a 3 to 6 month guideline. And if they're not working on all the things that they're supposed to be doing, they can turn that into a longer time. It's a little bit more constrained now with more recent juvenile justice reforms, but the idea is that they're supposed to be working on domains and making some progress through that. And so that we are part of that process, and we've kind of aligned the way that we measure student progress and our reporting that we do for back to our stakeholders in the facility and to the YPA to align with with similar processes that they use on the units. So they'll have a, a rating of excellent, good, fair, poor. And so we'll kind of try to align with that. We haven't put things into Power School. We used to put comments into Power School, but there was some concern about, those kinds of things following them. A few reasons.
Sorry, Melanie, I don't, just so that those know, Power School is the student information
Yeah, the
system
student
Provo
information
School
system,
District
the SIS
uses.
system that Provo uses. When it comes to this, very often we don't have much recourse when it comes to and any kind of acts, any kind of problem that there's been in the classroom. Generally speaking, as a whole, anytime a problem is in the classroom, it's not because of something that's happened in the classroom. It's not, hey, we're going to fight, we're not fighting with the teacher. They're usually fighting with each other. Those sorts of things usually come because of the living on top of each other on the unit, right? And we're not the ones that are going down and have any kind of follow through with that. We're not having a reentry plan. It's very rare that we don't suspend anybody. We are suspended as anybody can get here. So we're not really saying, hey, you can't come back to school. Occasionally we'll have like a cool down period, or we had a pretty good kerfuffle a couple of weeks ago, and they have the kids on split shifts and things like that. But again, none of that was about anything that was happening in school, and I can't affect anything. We just kind of have to react to it. I will often go down if I can see in our comments that there is maybe a conflict between teachers, not between teachers, but between a student and teacher from the comments. If I think I want to talk about something with a student, and that might be worth having a conversation about. But so often, what happens with these students is a construct of what they're going through in therapy, their living situation, what's going on here, the therapy that they're going through, like Benji was saying. And it's hard for me to separate those kinds of things into this is just school behavior and this is behavior that is happening in their everyday lives. And there's also the whole, well, just years and years and years of confidentiality drummed into us, as far as if we're sharing this, it would be an appropriate thing. Most of this information is shared in the care system, the system that the district, or not, I mean, that the state is using. So if there needs to be a reentry plan with another school district, then that information would be shared at a level that would be an appropriate level, I think, as far as a reentry team, more so than what would go into an SIS system that would be shared just across that could easily be read by anybody at any level. So it's not like, hey, we'll never want to tell anybody what happens in this facility. I just think there should be a hierarchy of how that information is shared. And anyway, I didn't have my thoughts in front of me because I didn't realize we were talking about this today. But those are kind of most of the things that pop up for when it comes to my concerns as Lake Canyon, is the fact that we react to it, but we don't. We hardly ever have any kind of follow through, any kind of we're not the ones that are creating the word I keep thinking of is restitution. In a normal school, a kid might have there might be a plan for them to be able to, they'll come back to school if they do A, B, and C. generally speaking, that's not something that we're involved in very much. It can be if it has to do with maybe computer use or different things like that, but not usually. It's not usually something that has to do with us because whatever the problem is, it's not necessarily a school-based problem. It's usually a unit-based problem that we're dealing with. And do we talk about that? Do we talk about that and share that in our SIS system if it's not really an education-based problem? That any questions about where I'm going with that or any thoughts about that? If I can clarify.
I think Melanie, I think you explained it very well. I think let's go to Robert next, and then we'll open it up for either clarifying questions or just a discussion as a whole. But thank you for sharing your perspective and insight on it. Robert?
Melanie's position is very much my position. Maybe just a little more from the hospital is the hospital's very concerned about kind of their information getting reported to people that they don't have that control over. So we're very much inside the state hospital. The students are very much in custody here, and it's the treatment team that makes all those decisions and where and who information is reported to. And so that's kind of my angle on it. And then everything that Melanie said holds true with us as well.
Thank you. And so from my perspective, and I'm just going to give just a little bit more information, and then I'd love to open it up to hear other people's thoughts. The current climate that we are in with Representative Wilcox, Representative Lisenby, with a lot of the school safety type bills that went through last legislative session. Currently with reintegration plans, there were several bills. Representative Matthews was involved, Lisenby, and the way that those are set up is that if a student is taken into temporary custody, so pre-adjudication, there are, for a violent felony, for a weapons charge, for certain sexual crimes, those are to be reported to a school, and then the school is required to create a plan within 5 days of being notified, and this is prior to them even being adjudicated. So with that in mind, I am very open to the idea of certain behaviors not being reported that happen inside of a facility. But what I'm not comfortable is doing that in isolation, because that makes me feel like I would be taking information and keeping it quiet. And then if someone like Representative Lisenby or Wilcox was like, did you direct your facilities to not report things, to keep that secret? I do not want to be on the front page of saying, like, Benji said, don't tell anyone, keep it quiet, right? And I know that that's not what, and that's why I wanted Melanie and Robert to come to kind of explain their perspective, and that is not the intent that they have, and I want to make that clear. But I also know that sometimes when decisions get made and people hear, it can get manipulated a little bit and turn into something. What if we do make a decision to adjust how practice is? I want to do that knowing that I have a coordinating council supporting us in that decision, or to hear from you, to hear if you disagree with Melanie and Robert. That I'd like to hear your pushback and hear what your stance is. So at this time, I want to open it up. I really like to hear your perspectives. If you could, on the reactions button, if you could raise your hand, and then I can facilitate hearing your thoughts. Very, very interested to hear from you on what you believe is the best practice.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
My question is, in reporting the incident data, you're reporting an incident. Are you required to report, like or Melanie described, the outcomes and what happened after the fact, or are you just reporting an incident that happens in the school setting?
Melanie, I saw you come off mute. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, it sort of depends. I mean, generally speaking, if an incident happens in the classroom, we are part of the reporting process. So we will, put there are reports that are written. Anytime that there's an incident in the facility, whoever's involved with that will write, their version of what it was that happened. And we're involved in that if a teacher or somebody is in the classroom when that happens. But we don't, tell me your question one more time so I can.
So what I mean is in terms of the educational piece, so yours is Power School, but the student information system in general, do you just, in the student information system, do you just report the incident or do you report the incident and then the follow-up?
I think that that's part of the issue, right? The follow-up is very rarely anything that we have very much control over, right? There's usually going to be some kind of follow-up, but I am not the one that coordinates that.
Right.
I can be part of the discussion, but I'm not the one that's deciding because there's many, many factors that I may be aware of, but I may not be aware of as a school administrator. And to be able to outline what those might be, it would be a very narrow parameter of information that I'd be able to say, the only thing I think I could say is incident in the classroom, refer to the units and, precautions were taken or, follow-up was, done through therapy or through YPA or through whatever. Because with very few exceptions, I mean, anytime that I've got any kind of interaction with a kid when it comes to an incident in the classroom, it's really much more personal. I'd be like grouchy Robert over here to be like, Robert, how can I help you not be feeling that way in the classroom anymore? Is there, is it a school thing? Is it is there anything that we can do with that? It's I can't think of one time well, maybe one time in lo my many years where we've said, okay, you can't come back to class until you get this sorted out. Because usually it's not an option that we have. We can say that all the live long day, but a kid's coming to class, if they don't have enough staff, if, depending what the ratios are, there's just no guarantee that we can do any of those things that a mainstream school would be able to do when it comes to those sorts of things. And then also very often in following through with whatever an incident is in the classroom, you're talking about other students, you're talking about you're talking about incidents and behaviors that are going pretty deep into whatever their therapy is going to be. That's especially true in Robert's case. I mean, we're talking about medications. We're talking about, psychotic episodes. We're talking about lots of different things. And I think it should be reported. I just am wondering, it is reported. It's not like it's secret. I think the question is it being reported from school to school when a kid moves? And I guess my argument is anytime a kid leaves us, there's going to be a pretty big transition process. And there's going to be, a reentry discussion with people at whatever school they're going to go to, wherever they're going to reenter. There's going to be any kid that's coming out of secure care. So there'll all be a lot of, a lot of entities surrounding that kid and the incidents that have been had, and there's usually going to be a case manager involved, and a lot of those things should be outlined by that case manager. I just don't know if it should be in the SIS system. So
I guess my question though is, when you get onto Power School and you're doing your incident report, you would potentially write student exploded, treatment team took the student away. Is that all you need to report? Is it an
well,
incident?
that's the question. Right now we report it elsewhere, not in the SIS.
Okay, so
right?
My question is, and Benji, maybe you know this from talking to Aaron Broth, what is actually required to be reported to the state in terms of do you have to just report the incident or do you have to report what the outcome is of the incident?
Yeah, you just have to report the incident. And And even if Power School, and I know there are different, I mean, there's Educator's Handbook,
Sure.
there are different
Student information
systems.
systems.
And most of them, and some of them will like require some type of follow-up as like a
Mhm.
really kind of like is to help the admin to complete the loop, you know.
Mhm.
Um, but that in this case though, like I mean, I would recommend to Melanie or to anyone that the follow-up could simply be referred to JJYS staff or referred
Yeah.
to hospital staff. And that's all that has to be put in
Mhm.
because that's the truth, right? Like that's actually what happened. And so
Mhm.
there's and then it would close that loop if needed. So and as far as uh which I know that some of the concern as well is, well, is everything that we put in here, is that going to be seen by everyone then when a kid moves school to school? Um, and and the what I have found, I called several different LEAs throughout the state who all told me the exact same thing. We can see it if it's in-house, meaning, sorry, I shouldn't use that phrase. We can see it if it is within a school in our LEA. So Alpine School District, for example, can see Lone Peak High. If a kid transfers from Lone Peak to Summit High, Summit can see the history of things that happen at Lone Peak. If the school district allows for those permissions, which is decided by the school district and the IT team on what viewing rights they have on historical pieces. Um, but if they come from out of district, so if a kid from Provo School District moved to Alpine, they cannot see anything that was entered from Provo. You can't see historical
Oh,
behaviors from prior.
then I
Uh,
guess I would argue, we rarely have any Provo kids that are coming to Slate Canyon, right? Most of our kids are coming from here to someplace else. The benefit of having Provo kids having behavior logged into an SIS from elementary through middle to high school is so that Provo schools can see and different administrators can see that we're not sharing information with our district because most of these we have one every 10 years or so that's going to be a kid that's going to enter a Provo school. And in those cases there are those higher team meetings. So if we're not sharing it with our district and it's not being shared with other districts, then why do we need to enter that?
What's the benefit?
yeah, that's a great question. So and that's where behavioral incidents are looked at in aggregate statewide, right? So seeing the being able to use statewide data to, for all the reasons that data gets used, right? That we see there's there's an upward trend of drug use in the state of Utah, so we should get some additional support for that. There's an upward trend in violent behaviors towards teachers. We need to get some support or whatever. So it would be part of the data would be part of that.
We
And not
have to,
unlike
we have to in special education every year review incident data and actually do reviews with your special education teams when data shows us that your numbers are higher or lower for students with disabilities. So that's an obligation of the federal government.
And I
Right.
do, just so that you know, I do have a proposal of the data directly from Aaron Bruff, who's our director of data statistics. And I'll share my screen and show you all that proposal. But before I do so, Justin Seeley has his hand raised.
So it's definitely not my area. I was seeing maybe if Jill or Reg was able to jump in or April for a minute, but I think Melanie brought up some good points. And I would say that if I'm understanding correctly, this is information that's just reported through the school system itself that you're trying to gather, right?
Mhm.
Um, as far as incidents and things that occur in the facilities, um, it generally is a volatile time. They're working through those issues and different things. And by the time the kid's ready to transition out back into the community. When you do the youth in custody form and you have those staffings, I think that's where the case manager is relaying the information, because any incident that occurs in a facility, there's reports generated, there's actions taken to gather that. So I'm wondering if you're just able to refer back, if they really want to dig into something deep on a particular youth or something, you could refer back to the system that's used to capture that data. Um, but like I said, this isn't my area, but I'll definitely pass it on to April and Jill and get their feedback and thoughts and let them be prepared to kind of talk in more detail about that. But that's just me kind of surfacing, looking at things, and been out of that game for about 5 years now. So, but those are my thoughts.
Benji, if I'm understanding you correctly, that the main thing is, are we following the statute as it's written?
That's
Not
right.
necessarily whether or not the information is where it's shared or what we're able to get to it. Because I think I think along the same line as Justin. And we know that it's being reported and entered. But from a statute standpoint, is it necessary to put it into the SIS system? Or legally, is it a good idea to do that? Confidentiality wise.
Which House bills or which statute is it following, so I can make sure that I follow up with that information for them? I'm assuming they would know, but like I said, just maybe offhand if you know.
Honestly, I don't know the exact statute. I refer my reference is from the UTREC specifications manual,
Okay.
which is a document that that USBE provides to LEAs throughout the state. And there's sections in there that use the words required, like required for reporting. So things like attendance, and there are specific behaviors that are required. So not every single behavior is required, but they have a list of behaviors that are required to be reported. Typically, they are more of your, to use a term loosely, like your more serious type things. Small redirect, or like small classroom disruptions aren't necessarily on that list, but.
Okay.
And I'm happy to, so our board rule is R277-709, and in there, it says maintain a system to record incident data, including incident data described by rule R277912. And that's specific to, law enforcement related incident reporting, which is what our rule specifically says. It also, says, and section 53E-3-516.
What was the dash after?
53E-3-516.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
One other thing that popped into my mind, Benji, when you were talking about that, the behavior system and the behaviors are monitored throughout the state, is graduation rates. We, mostly anybody, it's less of a long-term thing than it is with the short term, but our short-term detention, we are a drag on graduation rates with our district. And it just makes me wonder how it skews behavior data, within the district when this stuff is reported in an SAS, especially with using educator handbook the way that they're starting to now here in Provo. Not that that's a deal breaker, but that's just what in my mind was like, oh, good. More reasons for them to be like, Slate Canyon.
Well, I know that I was in that position when I was principal of an alternative high school, where if you look at it in isolation, it looks like you're a drag, but when you're looking at it as a whole, so like my graduation percentage was like 35%. And so our Ogden school district where I worked was like, oh, that's a drag, like you're pulling our whole school district down. But when you took my N size and put it into Ogden's like overall cohort.
You frozen for everyone else?
Oh, am
It
I
did
back?
for a second there, yeah.
Am I back?
Yep.
You're back.
All right. I don't know where I was saying something really profound. So sorry, you guys don't get to
About
hear it now.
popcorn.
Anyway, I don't know what you last heard me say, but I'm not going to repeat it. But just uh, when you look at n sizes, I mean, when you have a smaller n size, which you do, you have a very small population. The percentage of when you just isolate you, it looks drastic. But when you factor that into all of Provo School District, you'll barely make any impact on their entire district. Um, I mean, unless again, like there's like one very specific, like if you're looking at arson or something that does not happen very often, but if you happen to have a kid in your facility that's their go-to, then yeah, it'll be like we've got a huge spike in arson. Well, it's one kid, and that's what data is supposed to do, right? Is to make you ask questions, and then if
Yeah.
you can see,
Well, my school in particular is students that are harming themselves and others. So if it's not just the through a desk in classroom incidents that need to be reported, but serious incidences, my incidences would spike. Um, that's just the nature of my school.
yeah,
These kids are there to get treatment for their mental
Psychosis.
abilities.
yeah.
And
Let me show the proposal from Aaron, and maybe use that as a little bit more of a framework that we can go off of. Um, just a second. All right, sharing isn't quite working. I'm just going to copy and paste it into the chat. All right, now it'll work. Hmm. Okay, so I just put in the chat, and I know it looks a little funky formatting wise because I copied it from a Word document, but um, so these are the three criteria that our Director of Data and Statistics recommended was saying that if the incident occurred during regular school services, so we're certainly not talking about something that happens outside of school hours because that has no business being reported in a school system. Then if the incident was primarily managed by educational personnel, and I know where he's getting at with that is there are cases even during school hours where say a kid is meeting with a therapist and maybe has an issue with the therapist, even though it's during the school hours, like that really has no business going into a school system if it wasn't like it wasn't really around school personnel. Um, and so that was where he was getting at with that. The word managed is, I don't know that I love that word specifically because I think that kind of alludes to it's more like the educator is the one directly handling it, but he was getting more at like that the school personnel is present. Like if basically the way that I saw it is if a staff has to explain what happened to a school personnel in order to put it in, then it shouldn't be put in like that. But if the school staff is able to write the report because they either witnessed it or it happened right in their classroom or whatever, then that would meet the second criteria. And then the third one is that the incident is not related to the facility's treatment plan for the student, which potentially, like, for what I know some of what like Robert has said, that may end up excluding most of what happens because it is part of their treatment plan. And I know that Aaron was comfortable with saying, yeah, we get that. Like if it's treatment that they're getting help and support with, that no, that's not That's not the bit. It doesn't every time that there is a slip up or sometimes there are behavioral incidences that are in fact an improvement, but still would rise to the level of an incident. And instead of documenting what could be viewed as an incident, but for those that are working with the kid, actually view it as a celebration, right? That this has gotten better, that it's not appropriate to be put in. So if those three criteria happen, then the incident should be reported to this Utah State Board of Education in accordance with the U-TREX file specifications. So looking at those three criteria, are these criteria that we feel comfortable with as a coordinating council? And this is a proposal, right? This isn't like we've already made this decision. This was in several meetings, a proposal that was made. So additional criteria, modifying the criteria, or saying, no, we hate it is all acceptable at this time. But I'd love to hear thoughts on this criteria as kind of at least the startings of a framework of what we can move forward with.
My my only thought, and I'm coming from the lens I have, is it would just be easier and cleaner for me if we just put somewhere in that the Utah State Hospital is exempt, just because at what point am I tracking down whether or not this is part of the treatment plan? I mean, some things I can look at the kid and see the result and say that is or that isn't. But I mean, the treatment plan for us is so comprehensive that I mean there's a team of people working with these kids. I have them for 5.5 hours a day, but there's 30 plus professionals that see these kids on a daily basis. That would be an astronomical feat for me to understand whether or not that incident in that day fits within that particular student's treatment plan.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Melissa, go ahead.
I kind of do agree with Robert in that that is a whole nother beast that is not comparable to anything else in the state. But between the detention centers and secure cares, I mean, this seems like such a crazy question, like how do you determine if this is part of the facilities treatment plan? One thing that I thought was like in regular schools, you have kids that have outside things going on that are happening at school and they're being reported in school. You know, they're having therapy, they're having family issues, they're having gang issues that are outside of school but are affecting their school. Kind of the same, but a little bit different, obviously, because they're not all together. So that's one thing I'm thinking. And the other thing is if the detention centers and secure cares are reporting that, at least there's sure, they're going to drag down their district. That's just what it is. I mean, unfortunately, those districts have that in their district, but at least they can compare with each other too. And like how to like improvement, I feel like is at least can be managed too. I don't know. I don't know if that's helpful, but.
No, I appreciate your thoughts. Yeah, that's what we're here for, is to hear what.
Give me an example, Benji, in your experience. What's most of the incidences that we have are not managed by educational personnel. If there's a serious incident in the classroom, it's not managed by us. So there are certainly things that happen in the classroom, and as a teacher in the classroom that I'm going to deal with, you know, my behavior in my classroom. But if I'm dealing with it, it's not raising to the level of something that's very serious. Because once it does get serious, I'm not dealing with it anymore. Somebody else is dealing with it. So what would be what would be an example that you could, if you can pull one off the top of your head, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, anything that's happening in the classroom is going to be an example of that. So, I mean, like I was trying to say, the word managed, I think I would probably adjust that word because I think that it's misleading and confusing. But I mean, even if, let's just take a very simple two students get into a fight in a classroom. I know the physical management is not handled by, did I freeze again? Am I back?
You're back.
Yes.
You froze, but we could still hear you.
I apologize. Um, if the so I get that the physical management of breaking up the fight, of restraining the kid is not going to happen by the teacher, but the teacher is still managing the rest of the classroom. The teacher is still potentially calling in. I mean, depending on how your setting is, like maybe calling in for support. And so it's still part of it's happening with the educator versus where Aaron was getting at with this. And I know this because I was in the meeting with him. It's the idea that like that this is something that happened, even though it was during the school day, if it happened outside of like school personnel purview, like if it was, a kid was taken to the restroom and while in the restroom something happened. Essentially, the idea of if state staff has to explain what happened to a school personnel, it shouldn't be entered because they had no knowledge of it even happening unless state staff tell them what happened. But if the teacher can write up the incident on their own because they were a part of it, that's what would be included in. It was primarily managed by educational personnel. Like I said, I don't love the wording of that indicator, but
Well, at the end of the day, Benji, you guys just have to tell us what you decide to do. I don't have to agree with it, but we'll do what we want to do. You know, I think that there are alligators in the mud here, but there's also statutes, and I can understand that.
any other thoughts from
Can I just, of
council?
course, I have too much to say. I always have too much to say. If I was to look at this through the lens of a general ed setting, and I recognize that these students have intensive services going on. But if I was to look at this through the lens of an alternate high school or just a regular high school, what it would typically look like is I'm in the classroom, kid has an incident, teacher addresses the incident, and then we potentially pull in an administrator, which then leads to parents, and then student either is suspended or whatever we choose to do to discipline the student. Is that a pretty fair description?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I've not been an administrator. I know you have. So if that's what it looks like, and then Robert and Melanie, just trying to understand what your classrooms look like. I'm assuming that there are staff that are in the classroom with you that are assigned to these students. And that as you're going throughout the day, you're having a regular class day. If the kid's having trouble, then the staff is probably helping them, which is where the gray area comes into this because they're there all the time. But I do think if there's things that are happening in the classroom, then there's something to be said for a need in the classroom. If we're seeing a pattern of behaviors occurring in that classroom, whether there's staff in there or not in there, there's something related to the classroom that could be impacting the student.
Again, we do report it. We have our own reporting system. It's not that we never talk about it or share it with anybody. We share more information than anybody ever wants. It's just that we're not putting
I totally know. Yeah, you through the care system and all of that. I'm not questioning.
No, I mean just our own system that we create to share with our stakeholders. So
so for your school purposes,
yes,
you have your own system.
Yes.
So
It's just not shared in the SIS system. We're not putting it out there for everybody else. It's sort of an internal data collection. So part of it is data collection and in rating how the students are doing. And then if there is an incident or a daily, there's several students that may have conflicts, whatever's happening in the classroom with students, with teachers, whatever. And we report that regularly, weekly, we have, or daily really, with whatever's happening. It's just a matter of if we're putting that into, if we take those incidents, clean them up for statute purposes and put them in SIS. So we take those as part of our daily information that we can share with any of the supervisors, any of the staff, any of the, the JJOS people that are here with us, to talk about, what's happening with the student in school. And then we also share it as part of our YPA report. So we have a BMS system that we're using and a rating system that we're using to align with what the same kind of idea that the facility is using for YPA ratings. We're part of that school rating as well. We give them a school rating. And then we talk about incidents and we talk about it in their team meetings. So we go over all of that information in their team meetings as well. So we
Right, but
talk. It's just not in the SIS system.
And yeah, and thank you, Melanie. And just for the sake of time, I want to keep we are only talking about reporting in SIS,
Yeah, I get that.
which is not happening. And so we're looking at is that a practice that should or should not happen? So I've put a proposal from our director of data and statistics. Robert also made a proposal, which is very simply that state hospitals should be exempt. Melanie, I don't want to speak for you, but I assume that you would prefer the same thing to be said for JJYS facilities. They should be exempt from SIS reporting.
I
Is
would
that
concur
true
with
or
that
not
also.
true?
Yeah, I do. I think there should be an element of that. Some really careful
that's
consideration about that.
that's perfectly fine. I appreciate the proposal. What I need to do now is I need to from this coordinating council, and I'm looking at this a little bit like we're the school board right now of I've got some proposals and I'm really wanting to just essentially take it to a vote of that I can report back and say the coordinating council as a whole recommends that state hospital and JJYS facilities should be exempt from SIS reporting, or that we support the 3 criteria given to us by Aaron, or if you would like to make an amendment to what Aaron put in, that I would like to hear your amendment. And I listen to a lot of board meetings, so I'm not an expert on Robert's rules, but I feel like I could do pretty good at listening to your amendments and giving you a chance to speak and then calling it to question and calling for an adjournment immediately. So, whatever people want to do. Melissa, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, so I just have a question. When the students leave facilities, then what's being reported to that next school? Because something, they need to be aware of what the issues are, right? I mean, they don't, so that's my only concern is that, oh, look, their school record's clean, then that isn't, but then that's not going to give them the proper supports in place when they get there. And so that's just,
and that's
are they going to be exposed to, are they able to see all of the reporting and be able to pick and choose what they want to give to the other school?
I can answer.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Robert.
I was just, we have a transition meeting. The treatment team is in that transition meeting. The receiving school has every opportunity to ask all of those questions, and we give pertinent history. We do not give a full history. But to your point, our kids don't go within school district anyways. And so it sounds like that SIS system that we would be reporting to wouldn't give them that full data set anyways. So it's kind of a moot point in my mind, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, and that's a really good question, Melissa, and something that we sometimes do get asked. The YC team at USBE will sometimes be contacted by schools saying, we know that a kid just came out of a JJYS facility or out of detention or out of whatever, and we want to know why they were there and what, and they're not telling us, like they're not giving us the information, and that honestly is I know it's very, very related, uh, but it's actually different on what we're talking about. And so to bring a little bit of clarity, right now we're talking about whether or not information should be reported to a student information system, Rachel, uh, which we use the acronym SIS. And so, in that student information system, they are different systems all over the state. Each school, each LEA can adopt whatever system they want. And that then gets it, though that SIS system syncs with USBE's UTREX system, which compiles data in all kinds of different ways. And so that is specifically what it is that we're looking at. Melissa, you do raise a very good question, which I also don't have a whole lot of response to. We brought that same question to, again, our Assistant Attorney General, who said people have the right to ask any questions they want. And the people being asked the questions also have the right to answer how they want. And so that it was kind of left vague. And so, like Robert just said, they share pertinent information. People could argue what is pertinent, right? There could be a lot of argument of saying, well, I feel like that should have been shared, or this should have been shared, or and others that say that could be going the other way and saying, Robert, you're telling people way too much. Like that is you're oversharing, and that's right. There's I mean, I think as a whole, like the guidance is that we're looking at how do we support kids to be successful in whatever their next step is. And so sharing information so that we could set a kid up for success, as well as keeping themselves and other kids safe is important, but there's not super clear, it's not super clear on what that is.
So can I just ask, but as a kid's transitioning, what information does that caseworker have that they can, what are they privy to that they can see so that they can give the right information out? Maybe they've been with them the whole time, so then they would know. But within DCFS, we know that that's like turnover, and JGYS, I'm not sure if there's a lot of turnover, but so are they given the other information to know? Like I understand with the state hospital, they're speaking to that other school, but I don't know within JJYS if they're speaking to the other schools. And so what information does, I just think that the caseworker can share whatever information they feel like is pertinent, but do they have access to what information do they have access to?
A case manager is going to have all the information that there is as far as charges and everything else goes. And I can't speak to what should or shouldn't be shared as far as charges go. They also have all the information that has been collected as far as how they did in school. Most case managers are going to get a regular update, a monthly update in that child's team meeting about everything that was happening with all the treatment, including the domain, the school domain, as they're in their stay in a JJS treatment center. So again, I think what Benji's saying is what they share, what they can share as far as charges go, that's a tricky question, right? And something that's certainly above my pay grade when it comes to that. But case managers are going to have the full picture of everything that's happening with that kid in all the areas.
And
Well,
Rachel, I know.
Really quick. Sorry, Benji, this is Jennifer Red, and I cannot
Yep.
figure out how to raise my hand on this thing. So I'm like, where's the hand raising on Zoom? I don't know where it's at. But as far as like information with DCFS, just something that I think would be really important for all like all parties, whether it's hospitalization, whether it's school, whether it's JJYS, like the caseworker usually does have like all information. I think something that would be really helpful though is if there's information that is gathered that you don't think should be utilized in making case decisions, if there's ever a way for you to note that in your email or things like that, like that, hey, this thing happened, but this shouldn't be a guiding force in case decision making. I think that's really important because that's where we see DCFS sometimes like have issues is if there's something happening and it's part of the treatment plan and it's being addressed and things like that, but they don't know if they don't have all of the information, then they don't always know what they're supposed to do with that. And that's when we run into problems is if they start taking action on something that's maybe already being addressed by someone. And so I think that will be important moving forward. I hope that makes sense. I just wanted to kind of throw that in because that's where we see the most problems is when caseworkers just don't know quite how to address something. And maybe it's something that they shouldn't be addressing because it's already being addressed.
Thank you. And I
Sorry, I'm
appreciate
gonna raise my hand on this.
no, you're fine, Jennifer. I appreciate you just coming off mute and speaking. And so okay, so I'm gonna the what's being talked about, I validate is related. It is very much related to what the initial proposal or conversation is, but I'm gonna need to just steer us back very, very specifically. We are talking about the reporting of behavioral incidences into a school information system. As far as what information gets shared when kids leave, again, related 100%, but it's not the same thing that we're talking about. And I think we're starting to, and I would love to have that conversation another time. But what I would really like right now is we essentially have two proposals in front of us. And if in the chat you could put either a 1 or a 2. And I'm essentially calling for a vote right now. Number 1 is the proposal that you see that has the 3 criteria that I put into the chat. If the incident occurs during regular school services and so on. If you believe that is a proposal that you would like to accept, then please put a 1 in the chat. If you would like, if you support the proposal made by Melanie and Robert that JJYS and state hospitals should be exempt from reporting behavioral incidents due to the nature of the facility and the treatment that they have, please put a 2. If you think that there is a third option that has not been given, please put a 3. And if you could put that in the chat so I have some type of like data that I can bring back to go, the coordinating council felt, you know, that this is that they should be exempt or that we should follow this guideline. Please put that in the chat for me. Thank you. Right. Thank you so much. This is clearly not unanimous, which is totally fine. And so just eyeballing it, I'm seeing more exempt than I'm seeing more 2s than anything else. And so that gives me something to go back to my superiors with. So thank you. Thank you so much. And I am going to turn it over to Julia now to talk about our next agenda item, which is youth coordinating forum.
Thank you. And I think this might be, it'll be a shorter conversation. I want to make sure we leave time for a roundtable, but so we are currently, let me get my thoughts together as I transition from that last conversation. So all providers, so JJYS, DCFS providers are mandated through statute, through the Office of Licensing, to report that they exist essentially to the school district. And so we have historically done that through a youth education coordinating form. And so what that provider is responsible to do is to reach out to that school district and say, hey, we exist. We either we want your district to help provide some education, or B, we have our own education provider. So we have been, that form, however, is very confusing for most of our partners. We spend some time, sometimes more than others, helping our school districts try to understand what that form is and why people are sending it to them and exactly what providers are asking of them. And so Dave, Benji, and I have been updating this form, and then we will meet with Dustin, who is on this call, on Friday to go over some of our proposed changes. Before we did that, I wanted to make sure to bring it to Coordinating Council for those of you that are familiar with this education coordinating form, to see if you have any outstanding questions or concerns regarding the form, to make sure that we are acknowledging and considering those concerns that you have before we make official changes to the education coordinating form. So I will share my screen and just show you this form so that you have context to what I'm speaking to. And then we'll go from there. So I'm going to share this screen. What I have right now on the screen is our proposed changes. I meant to open it. I'm going to open up just the original one just so that you can see. Okay, so this is the original form here. So I'm not really sure what to show you exactly. I'll just throw it in the chat so you can see it. And that would make the most sense. So you can just open it yourself and scan through it and decide if you have any questions. This is the original form. Again, like I said, we get a lot of questions as to what am I supposed to be entering in here. And then we are updating that form to just be a little bit more clear. One of the challenges that our providers have, or at least, sorry, our school districts or LEAs have when they receive this form, is they're not quite sure what is being requested. And so we have started this form off by saying, do you need help from the LEA, or are you doing this on your own? And then hopefully it makes the form easier. Instead of going through this form box by box and comparing it, because I don't think we have time today, I think what I would rather do is just ask overall, do any of you have any questions or concerns about this education coordinating form, if you have context or just questions in general that we can speak to? Maybe let me explain a little bit. Oh, I think I did already explain that it is just to let folks know that this place is in existence. I'll give you an example. We have, in one of our southern districts, we have a large amount of placements that are like professional parent homes. So I'll just tell you, like Crimson and Chrysalis, there's a lot of those homes. At one point, they opened a lot of homes in that area and did not inform the school district that they were coming, and the school district was not prepared for them. So that's kind of the purpose of this form, is so that school districts are prepared to be able to take care of the needs of the students. So just to give you maybe a more contextual example.
Julie, we haven't,
Okay.
I haven't heard any complaints about this. We put a little form together for our registrars, with a link to this to be like, hey, case managers, we need this form. And I haven't heard any feedback that there's any problems with it. It seems like it's pretty, doing what it needs to do as far as this goes for what that's worth.
So when you receive this, it seems to be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it seems to be pretty straightforward. If the case managers can fill it out, we're just saying, hey,
So case
here's
managers
the
do
link.
not fill this out. So
Am I
just
looking
to
at the
be
wrong
clear.
thing then?
So the one that, what's that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I looking at the wrong thing?
Maybe. So we have
Oh,
two
okay.
forms that are required. Case managers are required to fill out the student information form, which is different.
Oh,
This is to be filled out by the provider.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
My mistake.
So this
All right.
is like in your area,
Like
what's your shelter called? Why can't I remember it through JJYS? Of course, I can't remember now. Or like your day treatment provider.
Yeah.
Receiving center,
No, it starts with an A. I can't think of it either right at the moment, but yeah.
like Archway?
No.
Well, yeah, Archway would be an example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a
Provider.
contracted provider. But
Okay.
this is essential not just for those that are contracted. So even if it's a private entity, so a popular one is like Provo Canyons, which is a private residential treatment center. They provide their own education. They still have to complete this document, turn it into the local education agency to let them know that they exist in their LEA. And they would put in here, we have our own accredited education, and they're just informing you. Otherwise, sometimes they're coming in and saying, we want a teacher to come to our location, or things along those lines. So any other concerns or questions before we work through this with Dustin a little bit? I know one issue that has come up recently. Well, if you're not having these problems, I don't want to put problems, create problems. I did see some things in the chat who was responsible to fill this out, like the provider. I guess one question, Dustin, that's on my mind that I think is on several people's mind when they bring this to us, especially when they're a little frustrated with the process, is they're already opening their doors before it's filled out. But this has to be done prior to them receiving a license, correct?
Yes, and then on an annual basis as well.
Oh, and then annually. Okay, that's also helpful to know. Oh, and you answered the question, Benji. Great. Well, if there's no comments specifically about this, I think we can move on the agenda. And we will share this out once we finalize it to all of you so that you're familiar. If you're not familiar with this coordinating form, like Superintendent Squire, this would be something you would probably want to have in your records from the Young Women's Empowerment or any other program. So all of those programs that are open in your area, you should be notified if you're an LEA that they exist, or if you're DHHS, you should be encouraging your providers to make sure that they complete this when they open up new programs.
Yeah, and I guess Julie, I will just add, I know you don't want to bring up problems if there aren't, but the reason this form is so important, and some of what we do encounter, is when a provider is requesting very specific educational support from an LEA, and the LEA essentially says no, like we don't have the resources to do that, or we're going to just deny that, then we get involved, right? Then they call us and go, well, we have kids. What are we supposed to do? The schools say no, and we're not educators, but we're required to provide education to school-age children. And so it turns into a back and forth in that sense. I think, Dustin, you just bringing up that it has to be done annually. I wonder how much of that is what sometimes we get into an issue because sometimes they're able, maybe initially, they're able to provide services in a particular way, and then staffing changes, needs change, and then after they're already open and having kids, then they send in the form of the exact same requests, and then the school turns around and goes, no, we can't do that anymore. And they're like, well, we're already open. Like, what do you mean? You did it before. So anyway, that's some of what, but it does seem like it has happened where it's it's the right when they start and they already have kids there. Kids are showing up to enroll in a school, and the schools are like, wait, where are you coming from? And it at least seems to happen from information we get. So it's we're hoping to tighten up this process. Because at the end of the day, when these back and forths happen, the people who really lose are the kids that are not getting the right services. So thank you. Okay, well, we have about 25 minutes left in our scheduled time. And so what we'd like to do is, as a USBE team, we've brought several things to you and wanted to get your insight. But we also want to open it up if you and your departments are struggling with an education related issue that should be brought to the USBE team so that we can work on it and potentially create a subcommittee to meet on between now and our spring meeting. We want to give you an opportunity to bring any concerns before us. And so I'm not going to call on you individually. I'm going to give you the opportunity to either raise your hand, or if you're Jennifer, just come off mute and speak your mind. But want to open it up for you and your departments. Are there any questions or concerns or obstacles that you have specifically related to education? I was once a teacher, so I am perfectly comfortable with some wait time. And now I'm not okay with it anymore. So, all right. I am going to take silence as you are so happy with all of your education partners and nothing could go better. And I accept that. I accept your response. Um, so thank you. Thank you all for your time. Like I said, we only get together a couple times a year, and so it's truly appreciated with us. Uh, I I guess before I end, I still want to validate some of the what Melissa and Jennifer brought up as far as information that gets shared when people move, when students move from one place to another, um, and and potentially that's something that we could bring up um, in our spring conversation. I mean, certainly you can reach out to us before that, but I think there is some conversation and it's questions that we get asked. So Ashley is raising her hand. Ms. Corn on the Cob, go right ahead.
So it's not an issue, but Leah did ask me to share it with the group to ensure that you are all aware of the Utah Behavioral Health Master Plan. And as a part of that master plan, our office, the Substance Use and Mental Health, are required to help coordinate the Behavioral Health Commission. Those meetings have started. Those are public meetings that anyone can attend. You can find them on the public meeting website. I'm just popping these links in for you. Again, just to keep you in the loop and aware of what is happening in the behavioral health sphere in the state of Utah. And that's it.
Thank you. This is the exact place to do that. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Well, if there is nothing else, again, with our sincere appreciation, we thank you. I don't think we have a spring date set yet. Like I said, we do have a new executive secretary that will start on Monday. And so I will have her send out when, in a few weeks, because we got to get her oriented and
You do
going.
have a spring date.
Oh, I do? Oh,
Yeah,
look at that.
it's
you,
set
Lord.
for April.
April
Well,
9th.
it's under Kelsey, but it's April 9th.
Okay, fantastic. Then know that you are going to get another calendar invite because Kelsey's Zoom link doesn't work anymore because she's not here. So you will get an email from Morgan Taylor, who is our new secretary. So you're going to get another. I know I sent one out for this meeting, and somebody replied and was like, "I already have this. What's going on?" So that's the reason. Is that just when people leave the agency, their Zoom links don't work anymore. So you'll get another one. But yeah, April 9th. We look forward to seeing you then. So take care, everyone. Thank you.